All right, well, let's call the meeting order. Don't have a little gavel there. But roll call. We got Tracy Thomas,
Here.
Bob Bayless,
Here.
Marty Arrowwood,
Here.
Kim Fenrich,
Yes.
and Pete Powell. I'm here. Okay. Was any public comments on agenda items? Anybody? Okay. Okay, discussion of the conditions of the parking. We had one of the members of the old board went around, Vicki Myers, and took pictures on Memorial Day weekend and July 4th weekend of the parking that was on the island. And so these are her assessments here. It's a very busy weekend on Memorial Day, but the signs weren't up and the bumpers weren't installed and the app was not on the website. And I put a copy of the map in her handout to kind of see what people are looking at. Well, we might need to talk about this so that they can do something a little bit more about that. But that's the map that they're on the town website. And then on July 4th, was not as busy, was her observation. That was on Wednesday this year. But the new signage were up, and the parking bumpers were installed, and the map was there on the website for people to see. Okay, so this is Memorial Day weekend under the bridge. And then there was heavy use of right-of-way parking. And then you notice the boat trailer on the trailer there in the parking. Takes up a lot of space. I mean, this is an issue that we might need to talk more about, is the boats and the trailers down at the come out of off the ramp there.
That one was the owner. That's next to where the old pavilion used to be. And that one story, because I live down there,
Okay.
that one-story house right to your left, he could not get, with the other people that were there, he could not get the boat and the trailer based on where the driveway was. So he parked it there the whole weekend.
And this shows Greensboro Street. And so it's pretty open there. And then there's Scotch Bonnet, bordering the marshlands. There's just a lot of parking right there in that those streets that border the marshland. And then this is again Carolina Avenue. Down there you can see some trailers, boat trailers, and that kind of thing. And then here's a golf cart. And we made an observation that, see the lady right there trying to cross the street. And, now I think there are a little more. Even the sign over the bridge says now that golf carts or regular vehicles need to be treated as such. So hopefully with the police they'll be able to do more of that, keeping that kind of parking at bay. And then McCray Street. And I think one thing about McCray Street, I think it was Vicki brought me to talk to some people, that people have been coming here so long, they all go to the east side, all their friends go there, that's the destination. It's going to take a while to change that mindset of people that McCray Street and the east side of the beach is where to be for parking. And then we move into 4th of July. And then here's the same McCray Street, but very few cars parked there. And then there's somebody parking on the access walkway. I think that's pretty much right here in front of the town hall in that way. And all seems that the parking was much better organized. Okay, so here's the conclusions. And this is open for discussion. I'm sure everybody was here, noticed what was going on and that kind of thing. I think the new signs at the end of the bridge identifying the parking, that's getting more people to turn right at the bridge to go look for parking. And then this thing helps out some, that identifying the parking along the thing. There's a bunch of stuff on here as far as showers and handicap parking and that kind of stuff on the town website. And how to get that thing up there?
It should go away.
And then let's see, the online map was there. And then that there was available parking even on all the holidays. And of course the trailer parking. And enforcing of parking in ordinance is still an issue. You saw the truck parked on the right of way and that kind of stuff. And so, comments?
We have a sign pointing people down to the west end, right?
Right.
But there's, 7, 8 spots down there, and there's nothing between the sign at the bridge and the sign down there. So if I'm here as a visitor and I'm following the signs, then I see people just parking everywhere. How much motivation am I actually going to have to drive all the way down and keep looking? That would be the comment, right? I mean, I have no idea. I see a sign that says go left,
Right.
but then I don't see any more signs.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I put this up.
And if people are parking along the sides of the road, why wouldn't I, right? I mean, so,
Right. And I think a lot of that has to do with people that come down here have a spot that they like to go to. And until we can change the mindset of that, they're going to go where they've been going. And those are pretty much the day trippers, which I would think most of these are day trip people coming from the other side, coming over the bridge, coming to the beach, and they got a favorite spot to go. But I think we're in the right direction with the map that the town has, and maybe if we would suggest more of a more definition on here. Like it says, parking is available on side streets per ordinance. Maybe spell that out.
Because there's 350. There's approximately 350 right-of-way spots.
That people don't know about because there's no sign.
Because people don't know about
Yeah.
it. That's right.
I think where
That
you're
was
com-
determined in the first study. It's down there on the bottom.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Because I know, like,
You don't have to count those again.
Scotch Bonnet, I know my sister got married down on there, and we put 40 cars on the right-hand side, but there's no indication that there's parking there. There's not like at Scotch Bonnet that says parking, with a right-hand turn and then
Right.
indicates those parking places. So I know where you're coming from there, because the confusion, I live on the east end, and there is some real confusion about the way the signs read. It says no parking you go
from here to corner,
from
right?
here to corner. And so which corner is it? Back to the road corner or the corner all the way at the end of the street? And it's really the back to the road corner. Just something simple where I am is just said, no parking from here, whatever. But the back to the corner thing tends to confuse people, because we've stopped and said, when I go to the beach, I'll say, you can't park. It says no parking from here to corner. And they say, well, there's the corner. And they'll park on this side, or the corner down at the end of the street, and they'll park there. I think maybe a little bit of different wording could help too. Or
So we don't control those, right? That's state.
We beat that wording up too in another. This is the third rendition of this. We had a parking go around before the last parking committee where we tried to clarify the ordinances, and there was a lot of discussion about that wording on those signs at the corner, and that got beat around. I think if anybody can come up with better wording, because we tried it. It was tried, and maybe somebody new can come up with something, but that wording is a problem, but we couldn't ever figure out how to make it better.
And that was, I think I called about a year ago and said, because we had somebody, they said, try to think of something we know that's a problem
Yeah.
as far as that goes.
So they showed Memorial Day weekend and July 4th. But this extends to Festival by the Sea weekends and everything, right? Has anybody ever mapped that out? Because Festival by the Sea, all of these spots where everybody's parking under the bridge, unavailable.
Well,
Because
they
that's where
parking
the
on
because that's where the
OVW during the
festival
festival.
is.
Yeah, I think they loosen up the regulations to
Yeah.
provide more parking so
Yeah.
people will enjoy the
People
festival.
can
that
park
weekend.
on Ocean Boulevard during the festival.
How do they know that?
They just do it.
They,
Yeah, they can do it, but how do they know that they're allowed to do it? if-
Well, I think.
it was in the Beacon last year.
It was in the Beacon last year, plus the police officers are standing there when people are looking for a place. Once they get them started out there, they just fall in place. So they know to go out there. I've actually had people call me and ask me where they could park, and I said, well, you ask the police officers, it's going to find out. Because I didn't know they could park on Ocean Boulevard until someone told me police officers got them that way. So I can answer that one.
I kind of think festival weekend, as long as you're not blocking somebody's driveway so that they can come and go, they're a little more lenient, just to encourage people to come visit. But, and down our way, out on the East End, the whole month of July is like Memorial Day weekend.
I would expect so.
You know, just that whole time period, because I think that's the height of the season. And I walk it every day in the summertime, and I don't know exactly how to address McCrae Street, because you're exactly right. There are people, and I'm on the Ranger Street, and for instance, because we pick on the mayor, there's about 4 families who know to park behind Allen's sign, no parking here to the corner, and they come from Leland, and they know exactly where to park on the side streets. And I mean, we've gotten to know them over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. So you're right on that. There's that West End, there is that certain communities come and meet at certain places. You can see the same faces every weekend at those public accesses. So what is the question with McCrae Street, not having them on both sides, or?
I'm not really sure what the thing is on McCrae Street. I mean, it kind of looks like that with the right-of-way parking and the way things are going, that there's, parking is not really that big a, we have parking spaces available. So if we could just spread the people out more through the use of signage and stuff like that, would alleviate some of that congestion down there on the east end.
Well, there's going to be a certain amount of learning curve as
Exactly.
everyone went left.
Right.
And that was the whole idea of having signs that now tell you there's spaces available right. And like you said, for years, somebody goes left. Now they find out they can go right. We'll have more and more people going right and less going left. There was a couple of lots down there that people were allowed to park all over. I think they belonged to the mayor, and now he's starting to develop them. And so now there's getting to be some congestion down there, or there was at some particular time before those signs got put up, because they get down there and have nowhere to park. That was before we had the signs up. Well, then after we got the signs up, when they go left, they know they can also go right. So instead of parking all over the place down there, they started moving and going right. Because I noticed that towards the end of the summer that more and more people were parking on the side streets on the west end than I'd ever seen before. They're finally finding, they go down there. So now they're there. They have a map that tells them where the accesses are, and so they know where, to look for parking places.
And until the Beach Renourishment happened, when we had high tide down to the east end, there was no, even if you could find a parking place, there wasn't any place to go. So I think that started pushing people to turn right some.
But it's also like he says, if you look at where all the public parking, the established public parking is, 90% of it's that way. And so the whole idea, I thought, of what some of the things we're supposed to be looking at now, or the committee is supposed to be looking at, is some of these properties that we own, and I guess, coming up with plans to turn those into parking areas You know what I mean? So that we have more parking that way. I think that's part of it.
Well, it's-
So there's a
That- yeah.
document that said 380 and 318, right? West, on the west side, that's what I thought I read, is where those lots are.
They are.
I guess I'm a little confused on 380 because that's not by Brunswick yet, that's still by Canals. If you come from the west end, because I just looked on my way up here, unless I,
Well, he's got a map. I can show you where they're at on there.
Here, here's another copy.
Yeah. Oh, this is where I think they're at.
318 I saw.
Yeah, well, they're
380, looks like,
they're not far. They're kind of a little distance away, but they're not far apart, and it's not before the canals. It's actually before High Point. But-
going that way.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. And they go all the way through, both of them does. And I had a preliminary plan, I don't remember what I did with it, but I had a preliminary plan that actually showed either doing it in turning sections or doing them as double wides, depending on how you wanted to make it a one-way so they could find the parking places. Yeah, and we actually had,
these streets right there, or they're not streets.
yeah, that's
but-
it, that's it.
Yeah,
It's both of those areas. And we had put something together, but I don't know in fruition if it never got that far because it's part of Parton 3 or C or whatever
Right.
that plan is.
So part of our thing is to investigate the potential vacant land that the town does not own, which would support visitor parking on the island if determined to be necessary. Develop a list of town-owned properties that can potentially provide additional visitor parking if determined to be needed. Costs to develop, location, proximity to residential property should be considered.
Okay, so that sounds to me, the first thing we gotta decide is, do we need more parking? I mean, based on Memorial, after all of the things were put in place, it looked like 4th of July was pretty decent.
Right.
So once we put the first committee's stuff in place with the new signage and allowing, so how are we going to determine if we really need more parking spaces, I guess? Based on those pictures, I would say we don't, but I'm not sure if that's the conclusion we want to jump right to.
I would like, go ahead.
okay. I was on the first committee when we met back in June, July, something like that. And I think if we're looking at additional parking, I really don't foresee an issue if it's just on a handful of dates for the cost effectiveness of putting in a parking lot and everything else. But if we could look at a space going to the west that's available, that might be something we could try to look at just so we can direct more people down that way.
That'll help spread
In
you out.
other words, if we got the signage already down there, if we find a place that's not too far down, and it's next to the public access too, where they can go ahead and pick a spot, and that's a spot that you're talking about, wasn't it?
800 block.
And I think that would be a place that we could check and see how much it's going to cost to buy it or develop it or whatever it's going to need to be, and go through that.
That's the piece
But
y'all
wait,
own, right?
We
do we
already
even,
own it.
I think we're back, I want to go back to square one. Do we need more parking spots? Because it seems like we're not even utilizing all the
That's
ones
right.
that are available, especially all those ones on the marsh side of those canals.
Right.
If we could get them to park there with signage or however you can say, then we don't need to spend any more money to
Well,
create new ones.
if we already own the place, then maybe it wouldn't be that much to actually get something settled, which would automatically direct more people to the west if we're already going to try and change people's habits and show them where it's at. How many spots were we looking at down there?
I can't remember. Remember, I had that number too, but
Yeah.
I had actually drawn up a plan to put a maximum amount of parking spaces there. I do not remember what was there, but what I do remember about it was that it would probably be one of the easier spots to create parking. There's a couple of things about it that make it appealing because of what you can't do or you shouldn't do. It's right near the AEC. We should use as least intrusive materials as possible. We don't want to pave it. So you would want to have, like rock or something that could be considered somewhat pervious, although they're not really considered pervious in some venues, but they would lend themselves to, it would basically be a rock parking lot with parking stops
I
to
don't think.
direct people to parking places.
I
It would be a
wouldn't,
parking
I
area.
wouldn't get involved with the little bit of problem I have. I wouldn't get involved in putting a whole lot of money in it. But the one thing we all agreed on, or seem to agree on, is the idea if we can get people to go to the right, go to the west, there's nothing down there to attract them to do it. So maybe that the possibility of looking at that type of an outlet to get it started and then properly market and showing that it is public parking, maybe that'll start getting more people to go down there and utilize that.
Let me say something, and I'm not trying to get off course here, but I think, and Rhonda, if I'm saying this wrong, you can correct me, but staff, which is me and Rhonda, which is the camera folks, okay?
Staff.
Yeah, the whole staff here. We're not real, and that doesn't mean you can't. We're not, either one of us we've talked about it numerous times and we've debated it back and forth. I don't think that we are excited about parking places going in the Greensboro, the Scotch Bonnet, Sand Dollar, Swordfish, or the Sailfish areas based on those AEC areas and their close proximity to those tidal waters, those high water marks. I mean, I saw some pictures in one of our high tide that, that kind of has this word. So what y'all choose to do, we're not saying you can't do it, but we're saying that, it doesn't really lend itself to environmental friendly to park in those areas based on what's to the right and the left of them, And so we're just saying that as staff,
So
that's
this
not a
inf-
place
so
we'd
you're
like to
saying
see
this
parking, but we can't
information-
stop it.
But, yeah, that's what the first committee said, these are available spots.
Yeah.
That's why you're sending people to the right, because they have all these spots. So you're saying that they're not?
No,
Available
no,
spots?
no,
They're not
no.
environmentally friendly.
We're just not real. Our job is we don't let people go on the dunes. We don't let people tear down the dunes. We don't let people do things that aren't going to be environmental friendly here, as far as messing up the AEC and that kind of stuff. It's part of our job to make sure that don't happen. We just don't feel like that those are good places to be encouraging people to go park, because they're very tidal. Water can come up on them any day. Since I've been here, I see it more so than not, the water coming right up to the edge of the road on high tides. And, we just don't think that those are good places to park. But that's our opinion. It's not based in science. It's just what we know. That's all I'm
Are
saying.
you saying, and this is the marsh parking?
And y'all can ignore it after that if you want to. I'm just saying.
Well,
Some of it's coastal
either they
wetlands.
are or they're not. I mean, either
Some
we're
of it's
going to put them on
full
here and
wetlands.
you can park there, or we take them off
Well,
because
people-
they're not valid parking.
Well, the way we ended it last time with me and Rhonda was that people park there. But the town's not encouraging anyone to park there. But they're still available.
So they'd be available, but from what I'm seeing you're saying is if we're going to direct parking off of the bridge and go down that way, you would not encourage us saying at Greensboro to put a green sign that says parking here and then some,
Which is exactly
I'm
what I
just
would have thought.
expressing
If you're
staff's
gonna want to-
opinion.
If you tell people they can park there, then tell them where to park.
But ultimately, is that considered wetlands?
Some of it is
Some
coastal
of it-
wetlands and 404
yeah.
wetlands. I'm not going to say the whole strip is, but some of it is.
Yeah, it's within that 30-foot buffer of the high tide.
2
mark.
weeks ago,
Yeah.
the water came over the street.
yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
I don't know about Greensboro. The times I've seen that, Greensboro tends to have a wider shoulder, I guess for lack of a better phrase, right of way. But here lately, Scotch Bonnet, when
yeah.
it says high tide
Well,
on Scotch
yeah, I
Bonnet,
mean,
it's
you
over
can
the
say that,
road.
but my whole street is literally flooded when
Yeah.
when that's flooded, my street's flooded, and
Yeah.
they're still parking on my right of way, right? So just because it's flooded doesn't mean that you can't say to park there.
Yeah, but
My
but,
street
but
gets
your
flooded.
right of way is not within 30 foot of the AEC. It's not in that buffer. That's the difference. Is that buffer is there regardless of whether it floods or not. That 30-foot buffer is there. You can't build in it. You can't park in it. You can't. You know what I mean? And so
Well, they're not going to park in the 30-foot buffer.
Yeah,
You
on-
don't need
on
that
s-
much room
On
to
Scotch
park.
Bonnet.
yeah, Scotch Bonnet would probably definitely be, and so would Sailfish, because the tides come right up to that edge there.
So
Some
I
of
think we
those-
need
some
to
of those
definitively
areas,
determine if they're
404 comes up.
viable parking spots or not. Because if you're saying they're not, then we
No,
need
no,
to
no,
take
no,
them off the
I'm-
list. And
I'm
if they
not
are,
saying-
then we need to utilize them.
He's saying it's utilized, it has been utilized for parking.
No one's
And they,
stopping.
and nobody's stopping them, they can park there, but it wouldn't be worthwhile to develop it into parking because of that situation, because you couldn't actually do it legally from the restrictions that are placed on it. Is that right?
Yeah, 'cause some of it's coastal wetlands, some of it's 404 wetlands.
Even though the people are
We'd have to
parking
get it
there, we couldn't
located
do
to
it.
really
Well, we are
know.
telling people to park there. I mean, we're putting this out and saying it's okay for you to park there. So if it's not okay, then we need to fix that.
Well, I
And
think-
if it is okay,
Don't we have it in the available column? We had it in the
We had it
available column.
available.
yeah.
So it's in the available column,
Exactly.
but that means it could go away tomorrow. All available parking can go away
Yeah.
tomorrow. Even in front of your house, if you want to choose the option under the ordinance, that parking goes away.
Now, where is it located that you're looking at this piece of property at? Where's that at? I'm not even familiar with it
On the
anymore.
800 block?
800.
800, we already know it, we already own it.
Yeah, I know. Where's it
We
at?
do own it?
I'm pretty sure we
Yes.
already own it.
Yeah.
We do.
We owned it during the last parking.
It's beside the pump station.
Oh, okay.
But we would have to have the coastal wetland delineated and the
Well,
404
beside
wetland
the pump
delineated.
station,
Just so
that's where-
know
that's
exactly
where
how
the
much we
current
have.
parking
But we do
spots are.
have dry land down there. To know how wide it is, that's what we need
We've
to
had it
do.
marked before, I went down there, I had it
Yeah,
on a piece of
we
paper,
have.
but I do not know what I did.
And it's only good for 5 years for 404 and 1 year for CAMA.
So we'd have to do that, we'd have to form that
Okay,
task.
let me see where we are.
again.
Yeah, which,
It's this
okay,
area.
but the first question is still, do we need more parking?
Okay.
spaces?
So see, the pump station's right along
And
there.
I don't
Okay.
know if we have an answer to
And
that.
this is-
How do you even determine that?
Is
Well, I
this where
think
all
y'all have to
the
determine.
There's a
healthy
house.
stuff's at?
Yeah, there's a house. There's a lot of high area there.
Okay.
Then there's a house.
So
Sits
you
by
would say
itself
similar
there.
to like,
So,
go
yeah,
down there,
so
and
we
have
own
that
in between the pump
one little
station
spot where
and
you
that
can
house.
park
That house.
a few,
Okay.
maybe.
And there is some
cars,
high area there.
By the pump.
And we
Yeah,
had it
yeah,
located
that- it
years
would be
and years
similar to
ago
that,
that it would need
or
to be
like
done.
a
Yeah.
whole lot would
You're
be
talking about when we
gravel
developed the
or
parking lot?
something.
Yeah.
It would be like that.
Yeah, and there's a
Something
couple
like that.
spots available anyway, but then.
And how many
we
spots?
Don't remember. I hate to say, but I
It
did, I
might
laid
be-
it out one time. There was
Might be
two
worth our
separate-
while to all go down and take a look at it, you
Yeah.
know, see what you're looking at.
We can have, I don't know, do we have it mowed yet? Or we need to delineate it to get them to mow it?
We need to delineate it first.
Yeah. So,
But it's got some high area there.
It's where that yellow
Oh,
house
I've been
is,
all
kind
over
of
it.
the
Yeah,
middle
in
of
between,
nowhere.
in
It's
between the
thick.
pump
Oh, by that
station and
yellow
that
house.
house.
Yeah, it's like in that, it's like
Yeah.
if you take the
pretty
Greensboro
Before you
Street.
get to Scotch on it,
I know
that one
that
is?
one.
Yeah, if you take the Greensboro Street has the
Yeah.
pump station, and then you go down,
You
there's
wanna
that
look at that,
high
right where
land
that
there,
star's-
and then you get that yellow
right where I
house
put that
that
star
kind of you
at.
wonder what in the world
Yep.
happened here.
Yep.
Oh, so it's this area.
Yeah, it's between Greensboro and Scotchmont,
It's a
right?
good
And that-
size.
Right
No,
between,
but
right
they're
where
talking
that's,
about the
no,
one at
where the
800.
star's
At
at.
800
Yeah,
block, okay.
but in between the
It's that
pump
whole stretch
station
of land,
and the
right?
house.
Right, that would do some single in parking.
Yeah,
if you
because
diagonal.
there's
There's
some
a
high area
surface
there.
on here.
That's the
Let's see
first
what-
street after, before you would get there?
No,
But
there's a
just
street
looking
on
at
each side.
March.
You see where the star's at?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a pump station to your left.
We'd have to get a Corps
And
of
our
Engineers.
city's property is from
And
that
then
pump
over
station over to your right where there's a house sitting by itself.
This yellow house is.
So it's that whole area right in
Get
there.
them located.
I don't see another street besides all the way over here.
Somebody to park there and they get stuck.
Unless
Then
that's
they,
what we
we
need.
told
That's
them to
it.
park in a
Because if you look,
Yeah, there's another street there. And
that's where
there's,
the majority of the parking.
should be a street right there where your
Yeah, and
hands
it's
are.
considered
The other-
available.
Yeah, on this page.
Yeah.
But we don't need to.
Oh, over
encourage
here you're
them.
saying there's a street?
Mhm.
Become wild. That's what you
No,
probably
it's
don't
not.
understand.
No, just at the
It's
far end of the
there
marsh.
on the map.
Yeah, sort
Yeah,
of.
it's
And they
To the
choose
left.
park there.
Yeah, so it's that.
So
It's a
it's-
liability.
Right.
But if we put up
And that's
signage
still
and
not
say,
on there.
here, 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 you know, it gets flooded in my car, then,
Well, or they go out and get stuck.
yeah. I
I
got
mean,
it.
the coastal
There's a
wetlands, just tell them to park
donated to us
there.
down there too, but I don't think it's
I
used.
see where you're coming from.
Somebody donated us a piece of ground out of the end of Heron Lane.
No, up here.
If they just decide to pull off and park
In
there.
theory, they could do that.
See, my
And there is some areas in there.
According to what this,
See, I was telling them, it's like.
Well, they always have. People have always parked there. Seriously. They park there, they park on Sailfish. There's some of these places, they have like permanent parking. People are within the 100 foot. I mean, there's a place somewhere I see every time I go down there that, I think it's Sailfish, where there's cars parked right at the end of the road almost, with a trailer and a boat hooked to it, and that's on that marsh side. So people park there, people
Yeah,
use it.
They do.
And Sailfish, there's a couple areas on Sailfish where if you park, you're gonna literally be like that on the park, on the side if you parked on it. But there's parking, people know you can park.
So you're kind of like, and this is what we were just saying, I'm getting the impression that the parking's available there, but should I choose to park in there, I'm taking the responsibility that if my car sinks and I'm in the wrong place, that's my liability. But if we go in and we put signage in and we invite you in to park there and something
Right.
happens, then it becomes the
Right.
town's liability and the CAMA violations and those things.
Right.
Am I catching that? Because
But aren't we publishing this thing that says you can park there?
No.
This is-
This?
This is the only thing that,
Yeah.
this isn't published, just this is the only thing that's on the website? Okay, so that doesn't tell them to
This
park
is the
there.
findings of the.
Okay.
it just says where the accesses are.
Yeah.
You find a way to park
It
there.
Well, there
actually-
is some parking
Yeah.
on here, but just not on those. I
And
mean,
there's-
there is parking.
And there's indications there that you can park. And the indications are, it says no parking from here to the corner,
Right, which we're.
which indicates you can park beyond that point.
Got it.
So it's nothing, it's not like they don't know they can park there. You know what I mean? There always no parking signs in it.
So if we
So-
tell them to go to the right,
And they go down there and park.
there's only that one strip along,
There's,
The other side streets.
there is
and side
350.
streets. So there's
Yeah,
all the side
yeah.
streets, and there's that one little thing that has like 10 parking.
Yeah.
That's the only place really along the boulevard that they can park, is where that one little thing is, and then all the side streets.
All the side streets.
Yeah.
And then don't they use the pier parking? I mean, that's kind of.
Well, yes, that's another.
It's never been closed, but
It's not, that's not in these numbers, but
Yeah.
there was some other, the land use plan wanted me to count there. There's 75 parking places there. I counted.
But that's one of those
It
gifts,
is for
gifts
sale.
of the pier owner
Yeah.
that he doesn't.
And
That might
it's
be-
for
It is for
sale.
sale.
It is for sale.
It's for
Yeah,
sale, and it
exactly.
could be no parking there next week.
That's right.
Or a money-making venture.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, or it could be paid parking.
That's what I meant, a money-making venture.
So I guess our first order is to determine if additional parking is needed.
There you go.
So do I hear a motion? Is that why we do this? I'm not real sure. I'm not real good at this, I can tell. Does anybody, we want to take a vote on that as a group? If we feel that,
Well, I just think we should have some discussion about that first. Like, first, how are we going to determine that? If you look at that summary, the conclusion would be that it isn't. But I don't know if that we want to jump right to that from. Because Memorial Day was packed and everywhere, and that was before they implemented the signs. And then 4th of July, didn't seem to be any issues with the parking. There was lots of stuff that was open and free.
But that could be based upon when 4th of July was as well, right?
Right, so if we don't use that as our conclusion, how are we going to determine if we need more parking
Well, if
spots?
4th of July falls, my experience here since '88, if 4th of July falls on a weekend, it's going to look like Memorial Day weekend. You know, it fell in the middle of the week, so it was like, you didn't have that many day trippers, but if we look at peak times, if 4th of July falls on that weekend, you're going to have the same kind of parking as you do for Memorial Day too.
Right, but we don't know if all the things that they implemented, like the new
Mm-hmm.
signage and all that, would alleviate that. Because right now, it looks like it did, but we don't know that because it didn't fall on a weekend.
Yeah.
So I guess,
we should have thought about Labor Day weekend.
yeah, exactly.
That's what I
but
wanna
if
see.
you go back
That's what I wanna
to
see.
Memorial Day weekend, without all the stuff, it really wasn't that bad in several of the spots. We go back.
Yeah, I think that Tracy's right. The mandate from the board says that we need to determine if more parking is necessary.
Right.
And then the next two automatically get kicked in, and they're kind of pretty clear. We're supposed
Right.
to identify town-owned properties.
But I don't think we need to
And
go
see what it
off
costs.
figuring all that other stuff out until we determine whether we really need more parking.
So we're on the right track.
So are you kind of making a motion at this point to let it, I don't want to say slide, what's a better phrase, to see what the signage and the map being out there does to the parking before we look at, we don't have enough?
Right. But I would like this committee to figure out what's going to be that criteria, right? Because then we can have an objective measure of, did we make a difference?
Right.
How are we going to determine whether we need more parking?
Well, really, the only way we can do it is go out here on, this year, July 4th will be on a Thursday or a Friday.
Well, we should do Memorial Day first, because that's when we have the original data. And our signs will be up.
But from a planning standpoint, using the most extreme days with the
It's
lowest
not.
average is not the proper way to determine whether you need the most. Because at any point in time, you could have a circumstance that indicates you don't when it's only a one-time thing.
Right, well, that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah, so,
Well, but the risk is, right, the pier gets sold. The 75 spots go away.
That's for sale.
but those
And
aren't,
and it's already for sale. The 75 spots go away, we're sending people west, they're finding those spots and parking there.
Right.
So, that tells me we've got 75 parking spots to replace.
I don't know if I would make that conclusion, because we have all those side streets and we have all that marshland that we're telling them they can spot. That's 200 spots and they're not parking there.
But we don't want them parking there.
Well, that's another story. That's another
Well, there's a lot
story.
of side streets though.
yeah, those
There's a
aren't,
lot.
we didn't include those. That number does not include we tell them that they can park there, but this 350 spaces was all those other places. We didn't include that in our, now, I don't remember if it got picked up in these numbers or not, do you? But I don't think it did.
I don't
I think
know.
it's 350
I don't think
are
it did.
all the
That's
available
everything.
spots other than those streets.
Have we surveyed those owners
Which
to
ones?
see if they want people parking in front of their houses?
Well-
I mean, because ultimately that's what this comes down to, is if people are parking in my right-of-way, I don't think I would be a happy camper if I lived here, or
Yeah,
I came down
that's
for
what
a
But
weekend.
started this whole
that's why
thing.
the ordinance was changed.
And people were parking in my right-of-way, I would not be a happy camper.
The ordinance was
Agreed.
changed to address that. So you
Agreed.
can go ahead and put up a certain fencing or for certain type of identification that you don't want people to park there. And
You can
you're allowed
prevent
to
them
do
from
that
parking
now.
in your right of way.
So that's already out there.
That's why they're only considered available, because they only last as long as they're there per the property owner. If the property owner wants to exclude people from parking, then they simply follow the ordinance and put those obstructions in the way.
So
The
you're
ordinance-
definitely on the right track.
An ordinance tells you how high you can have it and what it can be made out of and everything. So
Right.
the thing of it is, if we look at what the board has asked us to do, they're asking us to just do one thing, really, if we don't have to go to 2 and 3. It says investigate other potential vacant land and town property that's owned by the town with additional support for additional visitor parking,
Excuse me.
if deemed to be necessary.
Right.
So if we don't think it's deemed to be necessary under this information we have, you don't really need to go any further. And then the other phase would be, even though we might have something else, if we don't think it's necessary to have it, then you don't have to go to the other length of what has to be done. It's not saying you can't do it later if we have a problem,
Right.
but they're not asking us to address the problem, how to get people to the right. Now we can make a recommendation, I'm sure, to the board saying that this is what we think should be done or should be taken into consideration by them. That there's a possibility of us being able to look at additional piece of property to direct more people to there. But if we don't see
So
under...
you lived down there this summer after the signage was up. Did you see any difference in what was happening with the parking down there? Did it seem alleviated a bit because people were now going to the right? I don't know.
Or you
I
think
don't-
it's just too soon to tell?
I think it's too soon. I think.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think,
It
I
changed
think
their
what's got,
paradigm.
I think
Right.
what's got to happen, I think personally, there's enough parking spread throughout or available parking that my recommendation is almost, let's let the information set in. And this, from the east end, these are the three things: the signage, the information published, and to enforce the parking laws that we have. That's a huge issue on the east end, that whether we're short-manned or whatever, And I have been told to my face before, when I have informed somebody parking illegally, they're not going to give me a ticket. I park here all the time. Nobody.
Been doing it for years, right?
I've been doing it for years. Or the gentleman last year, this is a prime example, who he was parked illegally on Ranger, and an older gentleman that was sitting with us, went over and told him, you know, you can't park there. His truck was way out in, this was before Ranger was kind of turned into golf carts, but he had a long truck. It was 3/4 of the way into the street. And he was, you can't do that. Well, he was very obnoxious and very rude and cussed this gentleman out. And so the gentleman went back and said, okay, we've been told by Wally, call the police. So they called, and the policeman, rather than give the guy a ticket, because he was illegally parked, came over to that side of the beach and found the man. And he, oh, I don't know anything about those rules. I am so sorry, you know, done after we had watched him cuss out a 90-year-old man. And this was a man who comes every weekend. He's always, you know, we knew of him, but that particular day he didn't park on the side street. All of that being said, I think some of the steps, I don't think I would suggest go out and buying right now, or using town land and using that expense until we, you know, maybe come up with a better name for the signs, you know, no parking, whatever, however, try to word that, and I know that's a difficult thing. But just to see where that signage and that right-hand sign and maybe indicating what we've got is there, get this, you know, up and moving and that kind of thing, and try to re-educate the public, you know. It does get the part of the parking problem down there also bleeds into the trash problem and everything else, because now we did notice it was better last year when the big, huge parking lot, the old apartment, which was, I think, what, Tim, 4 building lots, was closed off. And so that was no longer public parking because the owner had never really said you couldn't park there, but when the owner started building, that eliminated some of the problems. And, you know, it's not that I don't want day tripper, but the larger the mass of day trippers you get in one place, you tend to have more trash, you tend to have more drinking, you tend to have more dogs on the beach, and that kind of thing. And it's in piles. So I don't want to say spread out the wealth. If we can, you know, kind of get some more people into some more areas, I think it'll eliminate that parking problem down there. And they've had times where people have literally they know you have to vacate by 10 and the renters come in by 4, and they'll park underneath the houses down there and say, well, I'm going to, you know, and they've had problems with housekeeping and things. So I just kind of think signage could help us, but not marking off those marsh areas to say, you know, it's available, but you make the choice to park there, not that we're going to set up parking specific spots. I said a lot, but...
Yeah, can I ask Vicki a question? Vicki, can I ask you a question? Do you remember, because this has got 200 in here where it says in this, this is, see where it says Morse and all this has 200?
There's about 50 and there were 4 streets.
That's right. And so how did we,
We measured it out.
no, I mean,
Oh.
what does this number mean in this column? Because we got 426, that doesn't include the 320, the
Correct.
350. So even, there also another 200 available. That's what that means.
Well, I think when you total this up, you get 426 including
That 200, that's right. So that means that of the 350 that we're talking about, there's also
Yeah.
200 available in those 4 streets. That's what we determined. Although we're not telling people to park there,
Right.
they are available. So that is actually a 550 number.
Well, actually, it's 426 plus
The
350. So
Well, we're not
that's
talking about the public. They haven't even asked.
76.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess it's best to tell you all this right now, that there's 426 spots. Of those 426, it was like 226 in the public that are actually public and available. And then those 200 that was added made 426. And then we have the 350 available in those side streets down there.
And none of that includes the pier, right, Tim?
No, the pier,
No, it
no
doesn't
private.
include the pier.
We didn't include any businesses or any
Okay.
privately owned
It also
parking.
didn't include anything like, we didn't count any of the spots up here or by the park or by, any of that. None of that was.
We never counted those. That's right.
It was
Right.
just the, and
Mhm.
wasn't
It says
only
that in this little,
Yeah, I know
Tim,
that,
your
yeah.
$350 for parking in the right of way, those other spots, weren't those only limited? You didn't count them all, you just counted certain ones, right?
We
Up to
count-
like a certain area?
We counted all the side streets. We only counted the vertical streets, not the horizontal streets. Which means
Well,
Brunswick
I
Avenue
know-
West, where y'all have pictures of them parked on Carolina, we
Yeah.
didn't have that.
Yeah.
That wasn't
Well,
included.
I know you're exactly right on Scotch Bonnet because my sister got married down there, and that's
Yeah.
exactly how many cars we parked on that right-hand side of the street all the way around.
Well, I lived on Scotch Bonnet for 3 years, and people park there fairly frequently.
Yep.
And as far as water coming over the road there, other than these weird freaky storms,
Yeah.
I can only think of 2 times that we had the marsh so full it was coming up to the road.
And
And
they
those were working times, so.
But I think what Rhonda said, if we invite people in there, then, if you park there by your choice versus us putting the signage there and saying, we're inviting you in here, you're
the parking.
Yeah.
creating a liability
Yeah.
if something does flood.
Got a motion?
Yeah, I think we can still continue the conversation after we have a motion, have it seconded, then we can still continue it, then you can vote on it. I'd like to make a motion that it's not necessary to establish additional public or private parking at this time. Continued monitoring the efforts of the new signage and map identifying existing parking. Provide additional awareness of present parking and increase enforcement.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we can open it up for discussion further.
Yeah, I agree with that
That sounds
100%.
reasonable.
That's my conclusion to the thing, is that maybe doing a little more identifying some places that we do want people to park with a sign as they drive down. That way, like in big cities, they have parking in the different, right there where the parking is.
Would that help you on the west end, like you said, when you turn right, if there were a couple of signs with just...
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm far enough down the west end that
No,
nobody's going to be down there.
we had,
But for the most part, yeah, I mean, that was my question, right? I drove over the bridge, I saw the parking sign, and I'm driving, and I'm driving.
And it's like,
and I'm
where is
driving,
it?
And I'm driving, I'm thinking, I'm not going to be this patient, right? Somebody told me to go this way. It's like driving through the city. I see a parking sign that says go this way. 2 minutes, if there's no parking, I'm going to give up.
Well, I think when we designed the parking, we decided they were going to be in blue, and that's what they are, isn't that right? It says parking.
yeah, and we put up, since that was done, we've actually put up 3 more of those big parking
Yeah.
There's
signs.
some more down.
Since summer ended, there's actually been 3 more of those big parking signs put up down that way. And there've also been up some of those 2 to 5
And there's a way of
signs.
doing better signage instead of, you can go ahead and put public parking between signs. In other words, if you're going down the street, you can have a blue sign that says public parking between arrows and have an arrow and at the other and have that. So you can change that kind of a bad terminology.
I'm going to tell you, that would help a bunch. There's a lot of people that don't,
It's
they
one
see
way of
that
doing it.
sign that says no parking from here to corner, and they believe it means from the end of that street to the end.
They don't
Yeah.
know what
They
corner.
think the other corner.
Then you have to put up a sign that says
If you
this
can
is the
really figure
corner.
out, I'll bet you that you'll have
Corner
more
sign.
people.
An arrow on the sign.
You'll have more
Yeah,
people
it's
taking
very
advantage.
confusing.
But if you put public parking, and keep it in blue and keep it up continuous with the same kind of before, and you have, public parking, the 2 between signs,
Between signs.
to the,
yeah.
and then you have the other one parked down. Then they know it's in.
And those, we actually talked about those signs, so y'all know that those signs are that color, so that when we do, or if we ever do develop these areas that we already own, then those areas would be designated with a big blue sign that says public parking, so they know what they're looking for as they're driving. But see, and it's all kind of preemptive, you know what I mean? Which I think is kind of sad that we're not going to, that we're going to end up where we're at now, and we're not going to kind of go into exploring the cost and, what goes into those other areas. I mean,
You mean other parking?
I can tell you that I'm going to be here a little bit longer, and probably before I'm gone, I'm going to be doing that. At some point in time, I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah, I would
There's
down the
there's
road.
another thing. I mean, we made a motion and then we seconded it. We can either vote on that, and you can also go back to the board and request if they would want us to do additional looking at one of the pieces of property that we have for future development, but not necessarily right now. And this,
Could we
this-
put that as the second motion? The first motion is what you put forward, and then the second one is that we investigate, especially those two, the one between the Greensboro pump station and that one, and the one on the 800 block, that we recommend that we investigate the cost.
I don't think you can make it a motion. I think what you got is you got a motion that you can go ahead and let them know what answer there is. And then you can go back to the board
recommend.
and ask for additional directives. Ask for an additional directive. If you would like to have the committee to still stay established with the possibility of looking at a piece of property that we already own, because it's something that we feel that might be necessary in the future, we might as well do some of the legwork now or something of that nature, and that can be given to the board. Right, Pete? Okay.
Would that be Tim, would that be a proactive way to look at
Well,
that?
I think you got it right. I think that you go with your motion, and then when you give the report back to the board, you can ask them what direction they would like to take next. And then
Just
they
tell them we can, if they want us still to be established, to look at the possibility of something that came up at our meeting, of having a piece of property that we could look at, but it would be something not in the near future.
I mean, ultimately, if we don't want people, I'm still going to go back to, we've got 75 spots we're going to lose. Yes, no, but the risk is we lose 75 spots. We're sending people down to the west end.
Where's the 75
Where are we going to
spots?
make up those 75 spots? And we don't want them parking on the 30 feet Cameron right away. So, we
That's all
should
state, ain't it?
plan to, if it was my call, I'd say we should be planning to do one of the pieces of property and just do it and see what happens. I mean, sometimes, at some point, you have to take a leap of faith, and it's not that expensive. So you just do one and see what the response is and whether it helps.
Well, is there a piece of land down there that we own that we could park people on and do like what Bob says, put the signs up there and says parking here and see? Is there something down there that's already?
Can you do that without doing any money and just mow it without putting gravel down or anything like that? Which
I
would
think
be-
once you put up signage, you've got to be a little bit careful. I mean, you let them park there. I don't know about the legal
I would
part
think
of
if there's
being
if
liable.
there is some place, I'm not really that familiar with that.
That would be that stretch, from what they're talking about, Ron, is that stretch between the pumping station and I call it the Yellow House. That would be the smallest, most obvious if you were driving down there to have the parking to parking, and then
Yeah,
I would think that if we did like Bob said, had a sign that parking, this is, you take the right, like Kim says, you take the right and you go down and all of a sudden you see this sign and are people starting to park there? Is that what's going to draw them down there? Or is that kind of they're just going down there anyway and they're going to park wherever they,
well, you're still going to have that for a while until
well, I would
a
think.
few years down the road till everybody learns, because like you said, everybody's got their choice spot that they like. And
Right,
I'm sure when relatives come, they got a certain spot that they want to park too.
You go to the beach.
The beauty in it is that particular spot is near an access, a CAMA access. And that draws people, because they can get easily on and off the beach. Same reason the East End is so popular, because it's so easy to walk down there and get off and get back on. That's one of the best parts of that, because that is a public access there, and it is a CAMA access.
One question.
And you got,
With that one would be, is it gonna work without a retaining wall? Are they
Probably
gonna
won't.
drop down? Are they you're gonna take
probably
sand
gonna
out
have
and
to
put
have a
gravel
retaining
in?
wall. That's what
I think
was
you got
thinking.
to take sand out and put gravel in too, because they're gonna drive right on, unless you have a stopping point.
Yeah, you're gonna have to have it, probably have to
That's
build a
just big
bulkhead.
questions I'd have.
You'll
with
have to
that.
build a bulkhead, or else you're basically stipulating to the same thing you have on Scotch Bonnet. And
I just don't
without
know if
building a
it'd stay in
bulkhead.
place.
Any type of money.
Well, that could be
Well,
something that they
you're
give
gonna
us
be
to go ahead to
environmental friendly,
look
you
at
need
it. Yeah. If
need
they
to
give
build a
us,
bulkhead.
they want us to continue with it, then we can do that.
if we were
Check
going
into
to put
that.
something there to test the idea, that's probably the least expensive versus the 800 one.
Yeah, you're gonna have to probably bring in, the two side streets are probably gonna require fill, they're gonna require leveling, there's gonna be some work done there. It'd be hard to say without looking at the area, because we don't know what's under all those myrtle bushes down in the 800 block either.
Until we really know if it's parking is, if we need more parking
Yeah.
definitively, then we're just kind of kicking around dust here.
Yep.
It's not, I think we need to, I think what we're doing is working, and we need to just kind of go on with that, kind of like what Bob said. Exactly what Bob said, we just make a plan and we need
Write that out.
to find somebody to go and, like what Vicky did, take the pictures and on busy days, like during the festival and stuff, and maybe suggest that they form a committee to monitor the parking over the next, next season or halfway through the season or whatever. What's everybody's thoughts on that?
I think that's a good idea over the next
We
season
just need to come up
monitor it.
with a good sign. To me, one of the things we just need to brainstorm and come up with a good directive sign, like no parking from corner to this,
Right.
to kind of alleviate some of that issue of that confusion, because we've literally down our ways, people have been confused, and we've said, you can park on this side of the street from here to here, don't park from here back here, and once you explain that to them, they're okay, but it's that, and I understand the hard part about trying to come up with the proper wording of that too.
think
No
the
parking
best
this
way
side
is
of the street, because it's
to
one
have
side
an
of
arrow.
one side of the street, not the other, isn't it? Isn't it one side of a street? So, like on no, rather than no parking from here to way down their corner, it's like no parking this side of street, and then on the other side, maybe direct it that way.
And there's other issues too. There's some of them that you can't, like, I'm trying to remember back, but you gotta remember, some of these streets were not put in the center of the right of way, so there's not enough room to park without putting your car on the street. Like Scotch Bonnet is one of those where the right of way is actually off center, so there's more on the right hand side for parking. The left hand side, the property lines come up almost to the street. In other words, there's not enough room to park a car on the left hand side.
Read that.
There's
Right.
no-
I could ever know that.
Well, you know it when you run over somebody's mailbox, or you can't. You run over the electrical box because it's actually in on the edge of the right of way, and it's only 5 feet off the edge of the right of way. Yeah, you just can't park there. You'll find it figured out when you go down there. It's one I think there's, so that's was considered when we counted those spots. And some of those streets you just can't park on one side of them.
So you didn't count them,
We didn't count
but you did count the marsh line.
them. It was counted. It's 200 right there.
So are they valid or not? I'm still confused about that.
They're valid.
They are valid.
As far as people
They're legal.
parking and the parking committee, they're valid. But I don't think you're gonna,
They're not recommended.
it's just one of those things. And I'll tell you why. I'll go ahead and tell you one of my reasons why. Is if you come here and you want to do something inside the 30-foot buffer, we have to tell you can't. And so when someone says, well, how are they parking? I see the high water mark. You know what I mean? Or Brooks says, why are you letting them park there from CAMA? Our job is to make sure people don't get into that 30-foot buffer. So what we've said is that,
30
there's
feet
no
from
real
where?
rule.
Or coastal wetland.
Yeah. Or coastal wetlands too, yeah.
What's the 30-foot buffer from where?
Definitely from the high water
Normal
mark.
high water.
Normal high water, and you've got a 30-foot buffer that we can't allow people to do stuff in. We just can't do it.
So what do you think the high water mark is? The road, edge of the road?
Well, we've seen it.
Yeah, I know, I've seen it on my street too,
Who
filled
makes
with
it?
water.
Who determines that?
We do.
God?
Well,
So-
God determines where it's at, but we mark it.
You know where it at.
If you get ready to develop, that's located, the coastal wetland has to be located, and the 404 wetlands have to be located. See, when you have coastal wetland, you've got 404 right there in the same area, which is determined by Corps of Engineers.
They mark it and then we go
So
mark.
if anybody's gonna build on the canal lot, the Corps of Engineers has to locate the 404 wetland, and then either us or Wilmington delineates the coastal wetland. There's 2 lines, and they have to be delineated, and
And they're
then
not
normal
always the
high
same.
water is also delineated.
And they're not always
So
the
where are
same.
they on Dutch Bonnet?
I wouldn't know without going down there and marking them. And the Corps of Engineers would need to mark the 404 wetlands, if you want to know exactly where they were.
In our policy,
Just like
Just
on
give me-
Seagulls.
Just give me an estimate. Is it enough to park a car or not?
Coastal wetland wise, I could not answer,
Okay.
because I think coastal wetlands come up to the street in a lot of those
and
areas.
that's why I was saying they're not the same. A lot of
And
times it's
404 is Corps of Engineer.
Yep.
They do borings and determine where their line is. There's an example, Seagull Street. We just located all the coastal wetlands on that road and 404 wetlands because they want to start construction.
Along
All
the
that
right-hand
has to
side.
be delineated ahead of time.
Yep.
So we
404
know
came and marked
until-
it first, and then
Two.
we marked it.
We won't know until somebody does something or a situation occurs where somebody has to
If you-
take up.
And you decide
If
if
you
you
plan
really
on parking-
truly want to know.
If you're planning on parking there,
Do you really want?
you might not want to know.
Yeah, do you really want to know?
So, if I'm hearing right, we need to make a motion to, back to the BOC to form a committee to monitor the parking for next year. Is that,
Well, first of all, you already have a motion and second it, so you need to vote on this motion
Okay.
first before you
You
can go
read
to
it
another
I
one.
thought we did. I thought we said aye.
You did. You did.
We all agreed to that motion.
Did we vote on
Kim
it?
vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Didn't we all say aye? to
I
take
didn't
the
say
motion?
aye, but I'm the dissenter.
I think we just
so
made
it
a
doesn't
motion and
matter.
second it.
Well, you're supposed to say all in favor say aye, all against say
Yeah.
nay. You forgot the
okay.
nay part.
All in favor, say aye.
Wait, can you read it again?
Yeah.
So we can-
I had
I hope you can
Marty
read it again.
second. You made the motion. She seconded.
Right.
I had you
It's
second.
not necessary to establish
Have it.
additional public and private parking at this time. Continue to monitor the effects of new signage and mapping identifying existing parking. Provide additional awareness of present parking and increase enforcement.
Aye.
Now, Pete, you say all those in favor,
Then I seconded
say
it.
aye.
She seconded
Say
it.
aye.
I
Aye.
didn't have an answer.
And
from
Like
all
Ron.
sign.
Nay.
Okay. I didn't have an answer from him.
And then now, if you want to, I don't think you really need to make it a motion. I think you, for the directive to ask,
A recommendation.
make it, well, you're making, what do you call it? It's not a motion. You can't direct the commissioners to do something. That's not the proper way of telling them what to do. What you're going to do is just make a recommendation if they would like us to continue to keep the committee together, because we'd like to identify some type of future parking if it is necessary in the future.
And if you're going to extend this out to have people monitor, you're going to have to ask them for an extension on your committee, because your committee's only good for 90 days.
Yeah, but let's not forget, they asked us to do other stuff. We haven't done 1 or 3. We've kind of addressed,
Well, we're just getting over
Well-
the need for parking, because I got some other stuff too about, well, the next 2 are out. If we
Right.
can't, I think right now it's safe to say we can't determine if additional parking is necessary. We
No.
can't say it is or it's not. We really don't have enough information. So that knocks the first out, and then the investigate the possible use of paid parking.
right, so that's a whole nother thing.
Okay. So there is paid parking in other,
Communities.
I talked with Curie Beach, I sent an email to the mayor, and I put that in our packet, what they sent me back. And I think Curie, Oak Island's doing it, but they're getting ready to do it, they have a bid out, right? Have they done it yet? Does anybody know if they're implementing it this year, correct? And so, and Sunset Beach is doing it, but I didn't get anything back. I reached out to them, but I didn't get anything back. Did anybody?
One of the problems that we had with the first meeting that we had in June was we were putting the cart before the horse. You have to first identify what property you're going to have your parking. I contacted 3 vendors that were going to come out and give us an estimate of what kind, different types of parking, how it's done and everything. But what happens is, if you don't have the property that they can look at and know
Right.
what it's at, they're not going to come out and give you an estimate or anything like
Well, I
that.
think some of this was supposed to be that, right? Where can they park?
Well, now, some of those, you can't make paid parking because they were done by grants from CAMA.
Yeah. The only places that we could find that you could put paid parking is a property that we'd have to buy, and that was it. That's what we
Well,
were
I mean, we
looking
could do
at.
Jordan Boulevard, paid parking. But here's what I'm thinking about paid parking is just what happened in Curie Beach. The only people who are making money on paid parking in Curie Beach are the people who implement the parking.
That's right.
The town is not seeing a positive cash flow. It's right in here. And,
You don't see anything, because what they're doing is they're putting in the equipment, they're doing all this stuff, and
We-
you still have to have your own people monitor it.
We
Yeah.
tried a pilot program that did not cover the total cost. And I would think that people who are implementing it, unless you're just trying to do something, I don't see it as a profit center. If you're trying to do something to control the parking and that kind of thing and want to, put everybody's feet to the fire about parking in the right place and tickets and all that, then maybe paid parking is a way to get their attention. Paying to park here, and now you got to park a certain way, versus paying to park and making money.
So I think the town, their objective is to make money. That's why they want the paid parking, right?
I would think. I don't
But my
know.
concern with the paid parking is if you, we do still, all under the bridge and all that could be paid parking all the way down that road towards here, right out there. But then, what are you gonna do? You're gonna drive them to those side streets, because they're not gonna pay for the paid parking. They're gonna go down to the west and they're
That's a
gonna
good
park
point.
on all those right-of-ways.
That's exactly right.
That's
Well, that's
what,
what
so
we
you have to
determined.
change the
That's
Especially the
ordinance
people
down.
that are coming over here.
That's exactly
that we're trying
right.
to control.
So that's my concern with the paid parking. If we did do the paid parking, then we'd have to change the ordinance that you can't park on the right-of-ways.
Then you got another
Because
enforcement
that's another-
problem too. How are you
Yeah.
going to, if
Yeah.
somebody leaves their vehicle there, what are you gonna do? Now, is the city gonna start getting the business of towing vehicles, and where are you gonna put them, and who are you gonna pay to do it? And the liabilities when you wreck somebody's car when you tow it?
Yeah.
It's a-
When I looked at the Oak
Dang.
Island thing that's out right now that Vicki sent me, and I didn't print that off because it's so big, but the monitoring company, the company that actually implements the parking, is in charge of all of that. They're in charge of overseeing it, and they report back to the town daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or they had provisions in there for all of that, but the company does all that. And so,
Well,
And Sunset Beach does that too. I mean, they have a ton, all their parking is paid over there, but they also do not allow parking on the right-of-way. So you're forced to park in the paid parking if you want to go there.
there's also another factor. There's a factor that we have here that I know Sunset doesn't have. Ocean Isle more mirrors us than Sunset, but Sunset has something special, and so does Oak Island, and so does these other places. Our parking is not delineated or how would you say it? It's not compacted into an area in such a way that it's going to be attractive to any company that wants to do paid parking. I think part of it was that
They
a lot
need
of
a
them
certain number of
said,
spots before
yeah, a
they
lot of
come
them,
in.
a lot of them came back and said, well, you ain't got enough spots to make it worth our while.
I would think they would have told you you're gonna have to buy plots of land that can be
Right.
delineated
Well-
before we come in.
That's right. Yeah, they have to see the property before they can come in and give an estimate what it's gonna cost.
And there's some vacant properties nearby where we already have parking that could be investigated, you know what I mean, for future development, but that would go into your next phase once you find out if you've got enough parking or not. How about that? In other words, I don't know if the committee wants to look at buying parking so they can have paid parking.
No.
Okay.
Personally, no.
okay, and so, any more discussion about the surrounding beach communities, like Sunset Beach and all that have paid parking? All right, move this on to, well, we skipped over the Jordan Boulevard upgrade. And we found this, I guess we could save this and show that to the Board of Commissioners. That's what they wanted us to see what that was. I mean, that looks great. I mean,
So how many parking spots is that at? over what's currently there?
I don't know because I just found it about 10 minutes before this meeting behind me. Everybody's been looking for it and I was sitting at my computer and went, you know what? I know exactly where this thing's at and walked right straight to it. And it was 10 minutes before the meeting started.
You mean you didn't take the time to count those?
No, I did not.
I mean, there's
Basically
two
what it
things.
does-
It makes it look a lot nicer, so there's that, the aesthetic, and if we can get if North Carolina State's gonna pay for it,
That was a long time ago.
that would be nice,
Yeah.
but I don't know
I
how
was gonna
much.
look on there for a date, because I've been trying to find out.
Around
on the hunt for this.
2005, I think, is when,
Yeah.
Oh,
That wasn't that part
That'd
of,
be over in the right-hand
November
bottom.
2005 is what's on the bottom of that thing.
yeah.
Because I talked to Heather about it. I sent her an email. She knew something. She said that it was P&Z that did this.
Well, now, there was a grant that was received and utilized for the pier and the walkway and the other parts, which is actually, I found the bid documents, but there was no bid documents for that. Just the pier and the pavilion. But it was like that conceptually, to start off with, I'm assuming when everybody says NC State, they're talking about the North Carolina Department of Transportation, would normally be someone who would fund something like that, but that's not a state road. Is it? Is that, that's not, no,
No.
that's on Powell bill map, so that's one of our roads. So they wouldn't have invested money on one of our roads, I don't believe. Now, there would have been a grant maybe gotten
Yeah,
to do
grant.
that, but it wouldn't have been through NCDOT.
But my impression was it was a university.
that's what,
I thought it was
that's what
one
I
of,
think.
was it one of their parks planning class? I mean, it
Yeah,
was done
there's-
as a project by their,
Mm-hmm.
like if you're majoring in tourism or you're majoring in parks planning and design, I thought that was one of those projects.
But we found all the, we've got a lot of the
That rings
information,
a bell.
including bid
You know,
documents.
that they came down, a group
that
of
section's
students
not
came
included.
down
That might be.
and did a presentation of what could possibly, and that was one of those,
Concepts, yeah.
yeah, it's like a senior seminar kind of thing, that you develop a passive recreation area or an active one, and I think that's what happened with that original, idea. It was a possibility
You kind of look in
presentation.
there, you can see that the cars
I just
are
wanna say
diagonally
let's see
parked
what
Yep.
It might have been.
all the way around the whole
It's been so long.
thing. So, I mean, that
See,
would,
I have my degree in tourism.
that would be a lot of parking there.
Oh,
Got
yeah.
a piece of land
I
in
mean,
Virginia, and we had to do
I hate to
all
say
the
double it,
planning
but
and
it'd
the
be
game and
a
everything.
significant.
Oh,
number.
yeah.
And we
I'm
actually
concerned about the
submitted-
amount of property that's available
we
for
got an
that,
old dairy.
for what you would need to turn
Oh,
around
yeah.
there, especially in front of that pavilion.
Up in the front there.
Yeah.
Well, now we've got the sewage thing in the way, right? That wasn't on there. That's not on there.
Yeah,
It's not done on there.
yeah, that's not in there.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying?
Seventh Street.
'Cause
It wasn't built yet anyway.
It would be right in this corner right here somewhere. It
Yeah.
would be that.
Oh, wait a minute.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know that you'd ever see that particular plan at all. Maybe you can make it happen in front of it.
That thing's right about in there. But
But see, that's taking up a lot of that space that gets used for those
Concert,
concerts and dances, and Halloween events.
can't put a tree up on the dance floor.
Yeah, unhappy people.
well, I think that the new guy would have to bring all that in there. What's that going to cost? But if we don't need it, but it would be nice to do something with Jordan Boulevard and have a grant to pay for it.
What's really interesting though
Yes,
is that, what's really interesting is that the parcels of property to the right.
Yeah, they're for sale now, right? The one is. The one that has all the pilings in it.
No, it's just
No,
to the
so
other
now
side
it's
of
just
To the other
one
side.
Just to
behind
left-
it
just to
that's
left
been
of it.
for sale forever.
The pile hinge will be there to let when I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
They go down there and put up one board a year.
Really?
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
Is that how they keep from having to take them out?
Well, for one thing, I mean, I don't know if we should discuss that now, but but there's a whole bunch of reasons why they're doing what they do.
Of course.
If they ever fall asleep, we monitor them every year. If they ever fall asleep, just 1 year.
All right, so is there anything we need to discuss more about this? Do we want to make a recommendation to the board about the Jordan Boulevard project?
Well, I think if they haven't seen this, they might be interested in
Yeah.
at least
We can
looking
show
at
them.
it. Just show it to them.
You gonna keep that in your office?
I got it.
Where's that?
I got it.
Just put it behind there.
It started in my office. I shared it with, the reason I shared it with Amanda way back then was there was palm trees supposed to go along the 800 block where the park course was, and people didn't want the palm trees. They were complaining about the 117 palm trees, that it was not going to be aesthetically appealing in front of the marsh. And I said, well, it's funny because, and this was like in 2011, I was like, well, 3 or 4 years before that, it looks like 112 palm trees or something was okay. Anyway, that's why I was sharing it with her, because she was trying to get palm trees. It ended
So
up
I guess
living in
you're
there.
saying we'll bring that to the board and then ask them if they want us to pursue it further?
This is what they asked us, that the directive, it was find a, investigate
Well, see, I don't-
using paved, no, that's not it.
No, it's a discussion of the Jordan Boulevard upgrade, but I don't think that's feasible at this point to use that upgrade, because literally
The
the
turnaround.
pumping station, so I don't know that we could even,
Well, you're
Bring
not
it.
recommending it, you're just letting him see that what was recommended, because back in 2005, it's been a lot cheaper to do it then than now.
Well,
But the other thing is that way they get an idea of something that was submitted, but, yeah, they'd all have to redo the whole drawing all over again and everything else.
There's a lot of stuff in there that's changed.
Yeah. A lot has changed.
well, for one thing, the pavilion ain't built the way it is on here.
that wasn't Parks and Rec, that wasn't
Yeah.
budget. Now I'm thinking about it. Oh, yeah.
Right, it's more of an amphitheater type.
Yeah, it had 3 sections to it.
Yeah.
And this right here would be in the DOT right of way.
Red one had it.
But we've actually put,
Oh,
if I ain't badly mistaken, we actually used this to install planters already. Like the one that's here, and the one that was here back in 2000.
Yeah, this is the planters we've got. But
Mhm.
this only comes over, and there, Carolina Avenue kind of comes through here. So I got food vendors that set up in here at the festivals. And then I guess, there's the bridge.
That's
This
the
is right
ramp.
here.
Yeah, and there's that ramp.
Right, so
This is the bridge.
VFW is under the bridge, and that little,
It's over here. It's in that
Yes,
little
yep.
corner. But this is showing. Well, it looks like there's 26, but see, there's none over here. But they also got parking on the side streets.
mm-hmm.
So it's roughly, if you use both of them, that's. If it's to scale, which it looks like it is. So it's 18 on the sides and 26 in the middle. If you use that same belief up here, it's roughly 36 and 52.
yeah, almost 100 spots.
36 plus 52?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Based on this drawing, you'd have to widen it out, but I'm not so sure it would be any different. But the reason they've got this concept like this, and you could actually change it and put it over here, and then have the other single parking that way. Then you wouldn't have to give up. But anyway, that's getting too far into design. But I don't know why. If
So
you
what's
had
this-
enough room for your 90, if you had enough for your actual turnaround for a fire apparatus, which is what would be required for this dead end street, anywhere it could be put back here, you could actually shrink it down. But it looks like there's quite a few parking places up in there
Yeah.
that were being utilized.
What is this where it says end of Jordan, 96 spots on your original paper? Is that along Jordan, or is it from
That's
Jordan
all of
all the way
that.
down to here?
That's all that area up there under the parking and back down. That was 96 spots.
That's
To the
actually
end.
designated parking.
Yeah.
I don't think it includes coming down Brunswick towards Town Hall where people park in the right. That's right, Tim. It's just in a designated spot, like up there under the bridge where they have the fence and people park there. And
And see, you
just
lose
a designated parking.
you're going to lose a lot of this parking right here because of that diagram.
Right. So you had 96 and now you're just saying 88.
You're going to lose all this that's being used for parking. There's going to be trees and planters there. Apparently, when this was drawn, parking wasn't a problem.
Yeah, because, I mean, you could easily squeeze that up, and there's Vicky said 200 feet of right of way on Jordan Boulevard. I mean, that's a lot of space to not get angled parking on both sides of the median, up and all the way back. It'd be a tremendous amount of parking places. So, I mean, if that's, once they see the map, but I think for all intents and purposes for us,
So yeah, I think we should show them the map and then say, do you want us to pursue it further? Because it sounds like if you look at here, they're saying, go ahead and get somebody to give you
With a
bids
third
for it and
party.
stuff. And so that we can do that after they've seen the map.
yeah.
Come back together and then move on to the next step. If you really want to do that, given that you don't really need the parking spaces now, but you may when the pier goes away. And also then it's an aesthetic thing, so do they want to pay the money to make it look nice, nicer than it does now?
All right, so, public comments? Come on, y'all say something.
I have a comment. I don't want to say a whole lot just because this will be coming back to planning and zoning and review. So you need to understand though, I wanted to just clarify that you're part of a community advisory committee, a CAC, and the way that's set up, it's 155.15 under our ordinances. You guys do your business. Pete reports back at each of the planning and zoning meetings. And then planning and zoning comes up with recommendations that we send back to the VOC. And that's kind of the process.
Okay, so I would bring this stuff back to the meeting.
Right.
So,
Right, so that thing that we voted on goes back to
Goes
the
back
planning
to
and
the
zoning,
planning, yeah.
not to the board.
Anything we
No.
do goes to planning and zoning.
Right, and you should give us an update at our next P&Z meeting, so it's already on the agenda.
The 18th,
Yeah, the 18th.
next week.
That's why I was trying to get this meeting, and if we had to have another one, we could have it before the 18th, but.
Yeah, and
But-
it talks about how we report and who reports to who. It's all in this ordinance if anybody's interested to go back and read it, but,
Okay,
so.
so we're too far out of line then.
So,
I just
we're,
want to be clear that, when you talk about going to the Board of Commissioners, you
You're not
really
doing
don't.
Yeah,
that.
No.
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Good clarification,
but the
thank you.
planning board cannot change your directive from the Board of Commissioners.
Right, yeah.
They can't, that directive comes from the Board of Commissioners.
Right.
They were directed to form a board to carry out those tasks.
so are we
Yeah,
looking
I'm
at
sorry.
carrying forward and suggesting to the planning board to look at this as a possibility of alignment for?
I think we'll, pretty much based on the fact that we can't determine if we need more parking or not, and we did locate the thing that said a study had been made a number of years ago, but the results could not be located. So we've located them, and now maybe if they looked at it, they could give us a little better direction of what they wanted to do with Jordan Boulevard. Because it's really not, to go out and get a third party to investigate means to have somebody come in and draw a bunch of plans and stuff. And I would think that would be a lot of money that we would need more permission to do that.
Right.
I'm sorry. Joe, go ahead, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just, I find it difficult to comment, and I'm not attempting to comment here. But the comment on parking for festivals, that kind of concerned me about, that is acceptable to park, the way people may park, or they think they can park. But pertaining to the ordinance and everything, I didn't want to leave the room without making a comment. And that, to me, it's not acceptable. That we have an ordinance in place, whether it's a festival or whatever it is, the
Yep.
letter of the law says, this is what you need to do. Now, if enforcement is an issue, then that's the issue.
Yep, I'd agree.
And one other thing I wanted to share with the group, just as a point of interest, is that in one of the meetings that I recently attended, where there was a lot of the islands and a lot of the communities within our area pertaining to paid parking, that Wrightsville Beach apparently, believe it or not, and this is the town manager that said it, was that 1/3 of their revenue is as a result of parking.
I saw a thing that they charge like $25 an hour.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Per day,
it's that-
probably.
No, it was like $75 a day.
Well, okay, but be careful, because Wrightfield Beach also provides lifeguards, which we don't want to go anywhere near, right? And they probably provide facilities. If they're charging that much money, they're giving bath facilities or real bathrooms or whatever you want to call it, which we actually have, right, underneath the bridge. We have real bathrooms. So we are providing that to people free of charge.
They also have a very aggressive ticketing system, for
Enforcement
lack of a
Yeah.
better term. I mean, they've got I was there for a wedding last summer,
And
and
I'm not saying that 1/3 of our
yeah,
budget would be as a result of parking.
I lived at Wrightsville Beach for 20 years.
But I would take 5%
It's a different
at
place.
this point.
Yeah,
We wanna-
absolutely.
It's a different place up there.
But anyway, it's up to you all.
no.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, the Festival by the Sea thing, and the reason I brought that up, there's so many solutions for that. Have them park on the other side of the bridge and shuttle people over. How hard is that?
Where are you going to park them?
I mean, is there a problem with parking during the festival? I mean,
Well, no, because they let them park on
No,
the right
because
of
they let them
way.
park on the right of way.
Anywhere they want. Apparently there isn't.
yeah, I mean, there's not a problem. I don't,
That's a problem.
is it?
That's a safety problem. You just showed a golf cart
It is a
block.
safety
you just,
problem
You
that
just
they're-
showed a
that
golf
they let
cart
them
blocking
do
the
that.
beach access and said that was a safety problem.
I think,
You have people
in
parking
all
the rights of way,
seriousness, I
that's a
think
huge safety
the
problem.
biggest problem with Festival by the Sea parking is they pretty much ease the Oceanfront Boulevard parking at that point. I don't see much difference on the east end, other than, say, Brunswick Avenue. On a busy day, it goes from here, maybe 2 blocks to Halsted on the side of the streets. Festival by the Sea, it'll go all the way down to Ferry Street, but it's the same situation. But I think it's the Ocean Boulevard where they ease up on that, as far as that goes.
But what you said on Brunswick, that's legal, because that's the right of way they're allowed to, but on the Ocean Boulevard,
That's the one
where
they,
they're letting them do it when they're
That's a
not
huge
supposed to,
problem.
because it doesn't
They've
meet
got
the.
multiple. Oh, that's right.
because if you're looking for a shuttle place, and this is just North
That's
Public
not a
Park, and the
family
closest
beach.
place you could put in a shuttle to bring them to Festival is to park them at Cedar Grove Middle School.
Yeah, because you can't use those people, those
Understand,
businesses.
understand.
Yeah.
That would probably be the closest, is to use the school to park there, and the school, and that's about
25.
no, it's not, it's about 15 minutes from here, as
Yeah.
far as that goes, but that's another whole,
I've never heard Rossville Beach be called the family beach.
No. It's crazy.
but no, they've got, there was like these 3 little old ladies in golf carts, and that's all they did for 10 hours a day, is drive around on the right-of-ways and stuff and put tickets in cars.
It'd be interesting to know what would happen if we had a extremely aggressive enforcement of parking.
Yeah.
I still don't know how people are supposed to know where they can park. That's
Yeah, I
a
think that-
baseline of where.
The signage issue, once the signage, we can get that squared away, then you can enforce the ordinances better. But I'm like you, there's real confusion on where exactly I can park.
But if it says don't park here at a corner, and they do it one time and they get a ticket because they're in the wrong end of the corner, they're going to figure out next time that's not the corner that they're allowed to park to.
Now, I don't even know if it's that. I don't even know if it's not I don't know how to say it, but there's a certain demographic of people who come here who don't like the rules. I mean, it ain't been too long
They
ago.
don't care.
I had a guy building his gutters in the middle of the street on Brunswick Avenue West. I mean, I turn and look, and he's the whole apparatus is in the middle of the road, and he's building gutters. And when I said something to him, he wanted to beat me up.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about
Well,
right
come
here.
on.
I mean, I'm talking about right there. But my point being is that those same people, it don't matter how many times I tell them on the job site, do not park on the road. You know what I mean? They just toss on their tool belt and go back up in the house. Of course, I call the general contractor, and he'll get them right. But you know what I mean? I don't know that the
Mindset.
people who come during the day, the greatest portion of them are any different because of it's a cultural clash. So to speak. I mean, I'm from Ash, and I don't want to follow them rules either. I want to come over here and park where I want to park. But that's, you know what I mean? But guess what would happen, in my opinion, I'm just saying it, don't put it in the
If you
newspaper.
start charging for parking, those people won't come anymore.
Well, it ain't just that. They will lose their minds, but that ain't my thing. My opinion is that usually if you do something and you're consistent with what you
Right.
do, which is one of the
They'll figure
things
out
I
the
did
new
the day I walked in the door, things change. And, you know, I was considered the worst person on the planet because the things I were doing was not what they were used to. But once they got used to them, it was okay. I'm just, I mean, I'm talking as a planning director now, and I don't want to get in too much trouble here. But if a person here is parking on the street, and then this guy parks on the street, then this guy's going to park on the street, and that guy's fixing to park on the street, and you know what I'm saying? But the word gets around fast if this guy is stopped from parking on the street.
Get the ticket.
And then this guy gets stopped from parking on the street, and then this guy gets stopped from parking in somebody's driveway. It won't take long because
Yeah.
it'll be in Food Line, it'll be in the grocery store, it'll be, you know what I mean, at the church. You know,
Right.
those jerks gave me a ticket for parking in the street.
I'm going to second that because down on the East End, we've been told many a time that I'm not worried about it because nobody's going to give me
Yeah.
a ticket.
Yeah.
I've done this for years. And I'm like you, it's a consistency, establish what we need
Well,
to
what it'll do-
establish and then be consistent across the board with how we manage it.
We all get hate mail.
I
Everybody
don't
get
have
hate
any
mail.
problem with the paid
Oh, listen, I'm a
parking,
teacher.
especially all the other beaches surrounding us do it. Every single one is doing it right now. And so, you know, people that don't want to pay are going to be, more and more are going to be coming to Holden Beach because it's free. And I don't have a problem with paid parking if we can make it happen, but I think that we need to change the ordinance that doesn't allow them to park on the right of way, because then they won't do the paid parking either. They'll just go down the island and park on the side streets. So you have to protect those homeowners.
Sure.
Well,
if
that's
we
been
did the paid
changed though,
parking.
hasn't it? The ordinance has been
Yeah,
changed.
ordinance
As long
has
as
been
you delineate your right of way, nobody can park in there.
Yeah, there's a specific guideline for making your parking unavailable. Parking in front of your house unavailable.
Yeah, but, I mean, that protects my house, but that, not my street, because a lot of them are rentals, and the homeowners doesn't necessarily care to change their, you know. And then you've just moved the problem to the side streets, because they're not gonna park in the paid parking.
Right, so
Because they don't
I
wanna
would
pay for
say
parking.
Yeah.
that it goes without saying that if you're gonna have paid parking, you're not gonna have any right-of-way parking.
I agree.
Yep.
That's what I'm trying to
So
say.
now we need to come up with 600 or 700 more spaces that we can put people in, and, you know, we'd have to rent or get an enormous amount of tract of land to make up for all these
Well, I don't think so, because they're not
700.
using the right-of-way parking, right?
Well,
Well,
They are on some of the streets.
700.
It depends on where you are. I mean,
76.
that's the McRae area, and that's a
Right.
huge number of spots.
Right.
I would venture to
And
say
that's all
that,
right-of-way.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
also venture to say these towns that have paid parking have invested money,
A
a
lot.
lot of it. But I would also venture to say they have X amount of public spaces that are not paid as well, because I don't know how that works.
yeah, Wrightsville Beach they do. They have them in the park over there.
That's right. They have to have, because you're not going to get funding in certain situations, or it's going to be talked about at some point in time if there's really not,
Any
available
public park. Well,
yeah.
You have to provide a certain.
I mean, I think we would have to investigate that, because I'm not sure if that's actually a true statement that they have.
I think we
public-
have investigated as
have
far as the
free.
CAMA accesses. CAMA accesses require you to have a certain amount of public
Public
parking,
parking,
and they're listed on the CAMA website.
Same with
Yeah,
disability
well, I
parking.
think we would have to validate that before we would, you know,
yeah,
Let's,
I would say to get into
You
all
want us to-
that is a,
Nightmare.
yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to our first proposal. Let's
Let's see if we
look
can-
at it over time with the maps now published and signage and so forth, if that,
Yeah, some
well,
of the
the
things.
first proposal does, it covers 1 and 2, but it doesn't do 3, which 3 is investigate paid parking. So, they were directing us to investigate the paid parking. and
But
I
if
don't
you
think
already
we've
said
done
there's no
that.
need for parking,
Right,
additional
but-
parking, then you already answered
So
no
they don't
to
care about for additional, they want it for a revenue generator.
Well, we don't know what they want it for. but
it.
they want
Doesn't
to
say
sit
what they
there.
want it for.
But the court, Bob made it pretty plain on that point, is that we don't have a defined area
yeah.
for them to implement paid parking in, and so they won't give us quote on paid parking. the companies who do the paid parking.
About the only defined area
Right.
we have is up underneath the bridge.
Right, under Jordan Boulevard.
Yeah, we had 3 companies respond to the request to come in, and the only thing they gave us was how their system works. And before they would meet with us, they wanted to see the spots, they wanted to see what the property was left before they even put, they're gonna have to invest money just to do that, to have their people evaluate if it's worth their while, and they aren't gonna do it until you can say, here's the property and this is what we're gonna use.
Okay, so that just needs to be in our summary back to the planning and zoning, which will bring it back to the board.
Okay,
That, what you just said.
Okay, I have a kind of I work things in my mind a little bit different than other people. We got Holden Beach, and we got, for all practical purposes, we identified 700 parking places. Okay? For the most part, they're scattered, they're in different areas, but that's how many visitors we can have if we enforce our parking. It's 700. In other words, on a full day, if the parking was enforced, they shouldn't be more than we have parking places, correct?
Mhm.
So what happens when, and everyone knows that, I'm going to bet you that if all 700 of them were full, that we'd be having one of the busiest days we've ever had in history. But to some degree, people go, I'm not going to go to Holden Beach because they don't have a whole lot of parking, so they go somewhere else. So what happens when we buy a bunch of property and produce 300 more parking places, and we are charging for them to park there, but now we've just doubled the number of day visitors to our family beach? Is that advantageous to the infrastructure, to the
You're saying more people come because
Might not be
their
the best-
parking is easier and it's better and it's...
well, yeah, we're going to charge $25 more for parking. You know what I mean? We have a parking.
You think more people would come if you charged $25 to park?
What I'm saying
It was
is
organized and...
yeah,
they
if
could
it was
get right to the
organized and
beach.
defined.
I don't think so.
Problem
But
is,
then
where are you
why,
gonna...
hold on.
Yeah, where are you
Well,
gonna
if
put a
that's the
lot?
case, then what are you charging for?
To make money for the town, to
No,
pay
no,
for
no.
the bathrooms and the garbage cleanup and the...
No. What I'm saying is you've got 700 right now. Do you want to make all of them paid parking?
Yeah, that's the intent. I mean, that's what I think the board would like us to investigate. I think that's what that bullet says. They
So-
want paid parking so we can
Well, you can't-
cover our expenses for what we're out, or maybe even make some money from
Well, then
renting.
I can answer your question. You've got less than 426 because the right-of-way does not belong to the town and could go away on any piece of property not owned by the town.
Right.
Well, and also
So
you can.
now you know how many you have.
How many? I didn't hear you. You said
Well,
less than 426.
it's like
but I didn't hear a number.
226
Yeah.
public parking
Well,
places.
and you can take the 10 that you've got still on Ranger Street because those are no longer parking
That's
places.
right.
You can take those off.
They became golf
They-
carts.
That's a total
So
golf.
now instead of 426, we have 226
Yeah, but
paid
I'm-
parking spots.
Yeah, I'm just
Right.
literally,
That's
that
it.
was.
And no
total-
right-of-way parking.
Right.
Well, we got right-of-way parking, but it's only available till they make it go away.
Well,
And
that
it's
was
on-
the deal.
Well, I mean, that's the deal.
Make the right-of-way go
Do
away.
paid parking and do away with right-of-way parking. So-
Exactly.
So right now, we've got around 200 parking spaces that we could use for paid parking.
And we know what those 200 are, that
Yeah.
we could tell the vending company, these are the ones we want you to investigate for paid parking, right?
Right.
And we could
If-
get a quote.
Sort of.
If they're not locked in to always be free into the public through the CAMA grants.
Well, I think then you need to go and check that out.
Well, I wrote it down.
Okay, thank you. Are we gonna meet again? Because I have a hard stop at 5:30 and I'm late. Pete?
What's the consensus here? I think we've kind of, well, we have not, well, we've discussed the paid parking, but I think,
Might have to wait until we get a further directive since you've already asked them the
yeah,
question.
yeah, because we don't, right now we're saying we need to study the parking more to understand if we need more parking, so.
Right, so I think I agree with that. For those 1 and 2, we're done. We're gonna
Right.
send this back to the, but I don't think we've identified the paid parking or the Jordan. So the Jordan Boulevard, we're gonna bring that
We're gonna
sign
show
to them
them
and say,
the-
do you want us to do any more? And then the paid parking, do we need to meet again to discuss that?
Well, it sounds like the question is exactly where those spots are. We
think
would
we
need to
know
know
that.
that.
Well, my consensus,
But
we
no,
don't,
he said he had to check with some CAMA things to make sure those are exact, right, Tim?
Yeah, we came to the conclusion, I think before, that there may not be an exact requirement, but for some reason CAMA has them listed, and I don't know if the grant requires them to always be, because we use grant money to build them, to always be free of charge.
So you're gonna investigate
That should be
for
pretty,
us.
it should be one phone call. Should be one phone call. More than not.
Because they did ask us to investigate.
I'll do it by
parking.
email and then share it with all the
Well, we can set up time for another meeting then,
Yeah.
do number 3.
Yeah, let's do that, please.
Because I can bring the stuff that we had last time from the other companies too.
All right,
Sorry to do that.
that's okay. We still have a quorum without you.
Well, then keep going.
The,
Thank you.
okay, when would you like to have another meeting? Do we need to vote on that?
Not to
Anybody
set
knows?
on a meeting, no.
All right, so,
Did you say it needed to be before the 18th?
No.
That's our meeting, so.
right, so we're
Okay.
gonna report back to planning and zoning.
Okay.
Then
Yeah,
have-
you got
then have
90
another
days.
meeting after
Right,
that.
so I'll say this, let me report back to planning and zoning on the 18th.
Okay.
See what they say about the pay, all these the issues we have with the pay parking and that. And the Jordan Boulevard thing, it's, because we didn't do the third party, we really didn't do that. We just kind of touched on what it was. And see what they say, see if we need to have another meeting. I'll get back with
Set up
everybody.
that.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Because we're going to ask them to keep the committee together to further investigate
Yeah.
through the season, the parking, and then maybe we had a group of us who were meeting regularly, they could go down and say, okay, we need a sign here, we don't need a sign, this sign didn't work, okay, or what's going on with the festivals, Kim saying about
Okay.
that
Make a motion to
violation of the
adjourn.
ordinance. Motion to adjourn,
I second it. I'm good at seconding.
meeting adjourned.